The story begins in the scorching deserts of Egypt, back in the year 1910. A lonely man wanders aimlessly across the endless sand, clutching a blood-stained dagger in one hand while desperately searching for someone. It almost seems as if he's looking for his young son. In his other hand, he carries an ancient statue with the body of a horse and the beak of a bird, a mysterious artifact that appears far more sinister than it looks. Exhausted from wandering, the man finally collapses onto the sand. The moment his eyes fall upon the strange statue, horrifying memories come rushing back. We learn that he isn't searching for his son at all, because he was the one who brutally killed him. It wasn't an act of hatred, nor did he ever want to murder his own child. At the time, he had been completely possessed by a powerful demonic entity connected to that very statue. The cursed statue had become the vessel of an ancient demon, and once it awakened, it began controlling anyone who came into contact with it. This evil spirit grows stronger by forcing its victims to slaughter innocent children and spread unimaginable terror. Under its influence, the man was manipulated into killing his own son with the dagger he still carries in his hand. Now that the demon's control has finally faded, the crushing weight of guilt becomes unbearable. Unable to live with what he has done, the man decides to punish himself. Using the very same dagger that took his son's life, he ends his own life in the middle of the desert, hoping his death will finally free him from his unbearable guilt. As time passes, both the cursed statue and the blood-soaked dagger are slowly buried beneath the endless sands, waiting for someone unfortunate enough to uncover them again. The story then jumps forward to the year 2003, where we arrive in California. Inside a quiet suburban house lives a young boy with his mother. But instead of feeling safe in his own home, the terrified child hides beneath a table, trembling with fear. Believing his life is in danger, he secretly calls the police and begs them for help. The frightened boy tells the officers that his mother isn't human anymore. According to him, every single night she transforms into a horrifying monster that torments him. He pleads with the police to save him before it's too late. Naturally, the officers assume the child is simply frightened or imagining things, and they aren't fully convinced by his unbelievable story. However, while they're still on the phone, strange and disturbing noises suddenly echo through the house. The eerie sounds are so unnatural that even the police officers hear them clearly. Moments later, the boy's mother appears, and the way she behaves instantly confirms that something is terribly wrong. Whether she is transformed into a monster or become possessed by an evil force, one thing is certain: the woman standing before them is no longer acting like a normal human being. Her entire body is twisted into an unnatural shape, while her face is horribly disfigured, making her look like something straight out of a nightmare. This terrifying creature is called Abigail, and despite her monstrous appearance, she keeps wandering through the house as if she's desperately searching for her son. At times, however, Abigail transforms back into the appearance of a normal woman. Whenever she does, she gently apologizes to Mikey for frightening him and speaks to him with the warmth of a loving mother. Hearing her soft and comforting voice, the frightened boy slowly comes out of hiding. But the very moment he lets his guard down, Abigail transforms into her horrifying form once again. Her eyes turn completely black, proving that she isn't human at all. Surprisingly, Abigail never beats Mikey or treats him cruelly. Instead, she calmly sits beside him and watches television as though they're an ordinary family. But the moment they change the channel, something shocking appears on the screen. Every news channel is broadcasting the same missing child, Mikey himself. And from this point onward, the entire story takes an unexpected turn. It turns out that Mikey is actually a 9-year-old boy who was kidnapped several months ago. Ever since his disappearance, his real mother and the police have been desperately searching for him, but no one has been able to uncover a single clue about whether he's alive or dead. The most heartbreaking part is that Mikey is watching his own missing person report on television. He even sees his real mother pleading for help, yet none of it feels familiar to him anymore. Instead, Mikey truly believes that Abigail is his real mother. The demon's influence has completely altered his memories, leaving such a deep psychological scar that he can no longer distinguish reality from illusion. His mind has been fully manipulated by the evil force controlling Abigail, Meanwhile, because Mikey secretly called the police earlier, officers soon arrive at the house and knock on the front door. Abigail immediately realizes that someone has come looking for them. Thinking quickly, she tells Mikey to hide at once. She warns him that a dangerous monster is waiting outside, and if it discovers him, it will eat him alive. Terrified by her words, Mikey runs off to hide without questioning her. As Abigail opens the front door, the police officers are instantly horrified by what they see. Her appearance is disturbing enough to make anyone uneasy, and the house itself looks badly burned, making it almost impossible to believe that anyone could still be living there. When the officers explain that they're responding to a distress call from a young child, Abigail calmly insists that no child lives in the house. The officers aren't convinced for a second. Ignoring Abigail's objections, they step inside the house to investigate. Toys are scattered all across the floor, making it obvious that a child has been living there. Realizing something isn't right, the officers begin searching the house despite Abigail's repeated attempts to stop them. The moment the officers begin searching the house without her permission, Abigail's expression changes completely. She becomes furious. Then, without warning, she suddenly vanishes right before their eyes. An eerie silence fills the house, until strange sounds begin echoing through the rooms. Children's laughter, mysterious whispers, and Abigail's terrifying laugh surround the officers from every direction, making it impossible to tell where she is hiding. The officers are now genuinely frightened and immediately call for backup. Determined to find Abigail before anyone else gets hurt, they continue searching the house. As they make their way inside, they enter the bathroom, and the horrifying sight leaves them completely speechless. The entire room is covered in blood, while the bathtub is filled with crimson water, with dozens of children's toys floating on the surface. Realizing the danger they're in, one of the officers immediately draws his gun. Even then, the disturbing voices never stop. They continue echoing throughout the house, becoming louder with every passing second. Among them, the officers can clearly hear Abigail repeatedly begging Mikey to come and play with her. But Mikey refuses, and the strange voices seem to guide the officers deeper into the house. Following the sounds, they eventually reach the basement. They expect to find Mikey hiding there, but instead they're met with an even more horrifying discovery. Lying before them are the brutally murdered bodies of 3 young children, all in a horrifying state. Before the sheriff even gets a chance to report what they found, Abigail suddenly appears behind them. She begins moving in a disturbingly unnatural way, almost as if she isn't even human. The moment they see her eyes, it becomes painfully obvious that something evil has possessed her. Whether she's a monster herself or merely being controlled by a demonic force, one thing is certain: the woman standing before them is no longer human. Without giving the officers a chance to react, Abigail viciously attacks the sheriff and brutally kills him. The entire horrifying scene unfolds right in front of Mikey's eyes. Yet despite witnessing her true nature and everything she's done, Mikey still refuses to see her as a monster. To him, Abigail is still his mother. As Abigail slowly turns toward Mikey, she gives him an unsettling smile. Her mouth opens, revealing rows of horrifying teeth, while her eyes become completely black. The sight is enough to send chills down anyone's spine. The story then flashes back 1 year earlier, taking us to the beginning of Abigail's life. At that time, she lived with what appeared to be a perfectly normal family. However, her parents had recently gone through a bitter divorce. Abigail's father deeply loved both of his daughters and wanted them to stay with him. Unfortunately, Abigail's mother was far wealthier and financially much more powerful, giving her a huge advantage in the custody battle. As a result, Abigail's father found himself in an increasingly hopeless situation. Abigail's father is terrified that the court will award custody of both of his daughters to their mother. He knows he doesn't have enough money to fight the legal battle, and the financial pressure pushes him to the edge. Desperate for a solution, he remembers an ancient artifact that somehow ends up in his possession. The very same mysterious statue we saw buried in the Egyptian desert at the beginning of the movie. Believing it's nothing more than a valuable antique, Abigail's father assumes he can sell it for a huge amount of money. Hoping to learn its true value in history, he asks a friend to investigate the artifact. But the information his friend uncovers is far more terrifying than either of them expected. The artifact isn't just an ancient relic, it's actually a gateway to hell. It's said to be connected to a powerful demon named Bulbazu, a creature that can cross into the human world through this cursed object. The demon specifically targets innocent children, which is why the artifact must always be kept far away from them. His friend urgently warns him never to open the artifact under any circumstances. The moment it's opened, the seal breaks, allowing the demon to escape and possess its victims. Once under its control, people become nothing more than puppets, carrying out the demon's horrifying desires while gaining unnatural strength and terrifying abilities. Unfortunately, Abigail's father refuses to believe a single word of the warning. While his friend is still explaining the danger, he casually opens the artifact. Thick black smoke immediately pours out from inside, filling the room. That smoke isn't ordinary at all. It's the imprisoned demon finally being set free. Within seconds, the evil spirit possesses Abigail's father, and from that moment onward, his life is no longer under his own control. That very night, after both of his daughters have gone to bed, the possessed father walks into Abigail's bedroom. Completely controlled by the demon, he begins behaving in an extremely disturbing and predatory manner. The man standing there is no longer the loving father he once was. His body has become nothing more than a vessel for pure evil. Before leaving, he threatens Abigail with terrifying words. He warns her that if she ever tells anyone what happened, a monster will come and kill her. The threat leaves the frightened little girl completely traumatized. Later that night, Abigail wakes up feeling thirsty and quietly walks toward the kitchen for a glass of water. As she passes through the hallway, she catches a glimpse of her father crawling across the ceiling like an inhuman creature. The sight is so unbelievable that she barely processes what she has seen and eventually returns to her room, convincing herself it was just her imagination. But the nightmare is only beginning. A short while later, Abigail opens her eyes once again, only to find her father standing right beside her bed. The demon launches its attack, brutally tormenting the terrified girl. Then, in a horrifying ritual, the creature forces its own blood into Abigail's mouth. From that moment on, the evil curse spreads to her as well, transforming Abigail into a monster. By the following morning, the innocent little girl is gone, and the creature that walks out of the house is something entirely different. After escaping from her family, Abigail takes refuge in an old, abandoned house, hoping to hide from the evil that has consumed her life. But soon after arriving, she makes a horrifying discovery. She's pregnant with the demon's child. Realizing what that could mean for the world, she immediately decides that the baby must never be born. She desperately tries to get rid of the child growing inside her. However, because the unborn baby carries demonic power, the pregnancy has already caused severe damage to her body. Even after everything she goes through, Abigail knows that if the child survives, the consequences will be catastrophic. With no one else she can trust, Abigail secretly calls her younger sister Alice. During the call, she begs Alice never to come looking for her and, most importantly, to stay away from their father. She warns her that no matter what happens, she must never try to find her. After giving this desperate warning, Abigail hangs up the phone. Not long afterward, the possessed father suddenly appears at the house. Abigail is stunned because she has no idea how he managed to find her hiding place. But the moment she sees him, she realizes he is no longer her father. His body is completely under the demon's control, and the evil spirit coldly tells her that she has betrayed it, and now she must suffer the consequences. Without hesitation, the demon grabs Abigail and brutally cuts off one of her hands. But according to the demon, that isn't her real punishment. It reveals something even more terrifying. The same nightmare that destroyed Abigail's life will eventually fall upon her younger sister, Alice. Hearing this, Abigail completely breaks down. She falls to her knees and desperately begs the demon to spare her sister. She promises to obey every command it gives her, no matter how horrifying the task may be, as long as Alice remains safe. The demon finally agrees, but only on one horrifying condition. Since Abigail is carrying its child, she must continue serving it by finding children who can eventually become suitable vessels for its evil plans. From that day onward, Abigail becomes nothing more than the demon's unwilling servant. She begins kidnapping children one after another. The first child fails to satisfy the demon. Then comes the second, and the third. Yet none of them are considered worthy. Each time, the demon murders the child through Abigail, and their blood is poured into the bathtub as part of its horrifying ritual. Eventually, Mikey becomes the next victim. Unlike the previous children, the demon doesn't kill him immediately. It senses something different within him. Mikey already carries a darkness inside his heart, making him far easier to manipulate than the others. Instead of becoming another sacrifice, he becomes the demon's perfect target, the child it believes can finally help fulfill its ultimate purpose. The story then returns to the present. Mikey is still living with Abigail, and despite everything that has happened, he genuinely believes she is his real mother. Even though Abigail has become a monster, a part of her humanity still remains. Deep inside, she doesn't want the demon to claim another innocent child. More than anything, she wants to save Mikey from the same fate that destroyed her own life. The problem is that Abigail can never fully break free from the demon's control. She fights against its influence, but the evil spirit always finds a way to take over again. Realizing that she may never be able to protect Mikey forever, Abigail eventually loses all hope. Unable to bear the guilt any longer, she decides to end her own life, believing that her death is the only way to stop the nightmare. Meanwhile, the backup officers who were called earlier finally arrive at the house. They manage to rescue Mikey from the horrifying place, but Abigail is found dead. Along with her, the sheriff and the 3 murdered children are also discovered. The shocking case instantly becomes headline news, sending waves of fear throughout the entire city. Abigail's horrifying crimes and mysterious death quickly turn into one of the most terrifying stories the town has ever witnessed. The story then jumps forward 20 years into the future. We are introduced to Abigail's younger sister, Alice, who has now become a successful writer. Determined to reveal the truth behind her sister's tragic life, she writes a book based on Abigail's story. She gives the book the title, Mommy Monster. The book's cover features a haunting drawing created by none other than Mikey himself. In the illustration, Mikey is shown hiding behind Abigail while his real mother stands far away, unable to reach him. The drawing also includes the lifeless bodies of the 3 murdered children, the dead sheriff, and even the terrifying demon that destroyed all of their lives. Every detail reflects the trauma Mikey carried with him since childhood. Alice has also built a career as a respected psychiatrist. Based on her professional experience, she explains that people's behavior is often shaped by the trauma they experienced in the past. According to her, Mikey's attachment to Abigail wasn't because she was truly his mother, but because his broken mind had developed a psychological bond with the very person who terrified him. Sometimes, victims begin feeling safe with the same person they fear the most. To spread awareness about psychological trauma and share Abigail's true story, Alice agrees to appear on a television interview. During the broadcast, she also apologizes to Mikey for everything he had to endure. The interview quickly gains nationwide attention, with major news channels covering the story. Among those watching closely is a famous journalist named Jennifer. While Alice's only goal is to educate people about trauma, Jennifer sees the interview as an opportunity for a sensational story that could bring her fame and money. Instead of treating Alice's interview as an awareness campaign, Jennifer sees it as the perfect opportunity to make money. She decides to turn the entire story into a sensational documentary, using Alice as its central figure without caring about the emotional consequences. When Alice learns about Jennifer's decision, she becomes furious, realizing that her painful family tragedy is being turned into entertainment. The documentary doesn't just anger Alice. When Mikey watches it himself, he becomes deeply disturbed. At the same time, the story hints that Mikey is no longer alone. A dark presence continues to linger around him, suggesting that the demon has never truly left his life. Meanwhile, Alice confronts Jennifer for twisting the meaning of her interview. Her intention was to educate people about childhood trauma, but Jennifer edits everything in a way that makes the story far more shocking and sensational. The documentary also includes several additional interviews from people connected to the case. One of those interviews features Mikey's biological mother. With tears in her eyes, she reveals that even after Mikey was finally rescued, he never accepted her as his real mother again. No matter how hard she tried, Mikey continued believing that Abigail was the only mother he had ever known. The documentary also includes an interview with the psychiatrist who treated Mikey after his rescue. He explains that the unimaginable trauma Mikey experienced during his childhood completely reshaped his mind. According to the doctor, Mikey's attachment to Abigail wasn't love, it was the result of severe psychological damage caused by prolonged abuse and fear. Another important interview comes from the friend who had once researched the mysterious artifact for Abigail's father. He once again explains that the artifact was never an ordinary relic. It was believed to be a gateway to hell, and opening it allowed the demon to enter the human world, setting every horrifying event into motion. Toward the end of the documentary, Alice presents the findings from her own research. She explains that a significant number of people around the world suffer some form of childhood trauma, whether through physical abuse, emotional neglect, or painful experiences involving their parents. Without proper treatment, that trauma can continue affecting them throughout adulthood, dramatically increasing the risk of violent or criminal behavior later in life. Alice makes it clear that trauma doesn't automatically turn someone into a criminal. Instead, her point is that untreated childhood trauma can have devastating long-term psychological consequences. She specifically warns that if someone like Mikey never receives the help he desperately needs, those unresolved wounds could eventually push him toward committing serious crimes in the future. As the documentary comes to an end, Alice quietly reflects on everything that has been revealed. Listening to all these interviews, she suddenly realizes how painful it must have been for Mikey to hear strangers discussing the darkest moments of his life on national television. For the first time, she truly understands just how deeply those old wounds must have reopened. As Alice sits alone, thinking about everything that has happened and imagining how much pain Mikey must be carrying, the silence is suddenly broken by the sound of her doorbell. When she opens the door, she finds a small child standing outside in a Halloween costume. The child doesn't say a single word or ask for anything. Assuming it's just another trick-or-treater, Alice smiles, hands over some candy, closes the door, and goes back inside. That night, Alice falls asleep, but her sleep quickly turns into a nightmare. In her dream, she sees her sister Abigail once again, along with the horrifying demon that destroyed their family and possessed their father. The terrifying memories come flooding back, causing Alice to wake up in a panic. As she catches her breath, she notices a dark figure standing outside her bedroom window. At first, she assumes it's the same little child she had just given candy to. But as she slowly walks closer, the figure begins to change. The child's appearance disappears, revealing the silhouette of a grown man kneeling outside the window. It only takes Alice a moment to recognize him. The man is Mikey, and judging by the look on his face, he has come because of the documentary and the interview that exposed his painful past. Fearing for her life, Alice quietly reaches for a gun and keeps it hidden behind her back. But instead of panicking, she calmly walks toward Mikey. As a trained psychiatrist, she knows that staying composed is her best chance of controlling the situation. In a calm voice, Alice asks him a simple question. "Why are you here?" But instead of answering directly, Mikey looks at her with terrified eyes and says that her life is in danger. He warns her that this time, even Mommy, Abigail, won't be able to protect her. It becomes painfully clear that Mikey still thinks of Abigail as his real mother. Confused, Alice asks him who is trying to kill her and what exactly he's talking about. Hearing those questions, Mikey suddenly breaks down in tears. He confesses that horrible thoughts keep appearing inside his mind. He constantly feels the urge to destroy everything around him, to kill everyone he sees. But through his tears, he insists that those aren't his own thoughts. He doesn't want to hurt anyone. He believes the demon is planting those violent urges inside his head, trying to take complete control over him. Mikey pleads with Alice to believe him. He tells her that he's terrified of the demon and doesn't want to become its servant. Then, in an emotional and heartbreaking moment, he begs Alice to become his new mother. He believes that if she stays with him, they can fight the demon together, and maybe, for the first time in his life, he won't have to face the darkness alone. Alice listens carefully as Mikey desperately explains that the violent thoughts inside his head don't belong to him. He believes the demon is forcing those evil urges into his mind, trying to make him become a killer. But despite hearing his emotional confession, Alice is still terrified. She slowly raises her gun and points it directly at Mikey. At that exact moment, a horrifying figure suddenly appears behind Alice. The true demon finally reveals itself. In an instant, Alice realizes that Mikey wasn't lying at all. Everything he had been saying was true. The demon had been following him all along, and Mikey had sensed its presence long before anyone else could. The story briefly flashes back to the night Abigail died. After Abigail took her own life, the demon abandoned her body and searched for a new host. It chose Mikey. That explains why the sheriff was murdered and why Mikey could never escape the darkness haunting him. The demon had already entered his body on that very night, silently controlling him from within. Back in the present, the demon possesses Mikey once again. Before Alice's friend can even react, the possessed Mikey brutally attacks and kills him, just as mercilessly as the sheriff years earlier. Another innocent life is lost because of the demon's influence. News of the shocking murder spreads across the city within hours. The moment journalist Jennifer hears that Mikey has become involved in another killing, she doesn't think about the victims or Mikey's condition. Instead, she immediately sees it as an opportunity to boost her television ratings. She orders her production team to contact Alice at once and arrange another exclusive interview, believing this tragedy will make for sensational television. Jennifer doesn't care whether Alice is emotionally devastated or whether Mikey is still alive. Her only concern is making the documentary even more popular and earning more money from the horrifying events unfolding around them. When Alice finally arrives at the television studio, she immediately notices that something feels terribly wrong. Religious symbols and protective items have been placed throughout the building, as if everyone is preparing for something supernatural. The atmosphere is tense, and fear can be felt everywhere. Then Alice sees Mikey. His clothes are soaked in blood, a rope is tightly wrapped around his neck, and he is holding a gun in his hand. Completely under the demon's control, he opens fire without hesitation, killing everyone in his path. The television studio quickly turns into a massacre, and chaos erupts everywhere. The staff explain that strange and unexplained incidents had already been happening inside the studio since the previous day. They ignored the warning signs, but now the demon has finally revealed itself. And with Jennifer still trapped inside the building, the nightmare is only getting started. Mikey then turns his attention toward Jennifer. She becomes his next target, and he slowly walks toward her, ready to kill her without mercy. Desperate to save herself, Jennifer makes a selfish decision. Instead of helping the people around her, she pushes her own assistant into Mikey's path, sacrificing her without a second thought. The terrified assistant is brutally murdered right in front of Jennifer's eyes. Even after using someone else as a shield, Jennifer can't escape for long. Mikey catches up to her within moments and points his gun straight at her, ready to pull the trigger. But just as he's about to fire, fate intervenes. The gun is completely out of bullets. Jennifer survives purely by luck. Taking advantage of the brief pause, Alice rushes in to protect Jennifer. But stopping Mikey isn't enough. The real enemy is the demon controlling him. As long as the demon fails to complete its mission of spreading death and destruction, it cannot fully escape into the world. That's why it forces Mikey to finish the job by picking up a knife and murdering Jennifer instead. Just as Mikey raises the knife, Alice steps in front of him and shouts, "Wait! I'll be your mommy! I'm ready!" Those words reach the part of Mikey that is still human, causing him to hesitate for a brief moment. For a second, it seems as though he might finally break free from the demon's control. But the demon quickly tightens its grip once again. Mikey loses control of himself and lunges at Alice, wrapping his hands around her throat and beginning to strangle her. Alice struggles to breathe as the demon pushes Mikey to finish her once and for all. At that exact moment, Jennifer regains consciousness. Realizing this is her only chance, she grabs Mikey's knife from the floor and drives it straight into his face. The attack is fatal. Mikey collapses to the ground, and with his death, the demon loses the human vessel it had been using all these years. Without a host, the weakened demon is finally forced to disappear. The evil that had spread through Mikey's body is gone. But the danger hasn't truly ended. As long as the cursed artifact continues to exist somewhere in the world, the gateway for the demon to return remains open. The possibility of another tragedy still hangs over humanity. Alice survives the horrifying ordeal, and the world accepts the official explanation. According to the public, Mikey was simply a deeply traumatized child who grew up to become a dangerous criminal. No one ever learns the terrifying truth about the demon or the cursed artifact. Instead, people praise Alice's research on childhood trauma, believing it perfectly explains everything that happened. But the audience knows the truth. Evil was never truly destroyed. It was only forced back into the darkness, waiting for the day someone makes the same mistake again. And with that chilling revelation, the movie comes to an end.